Hey everybody, this is a members preview for today's members episode. If you want to hear the whole thing and you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and hit the join button or the link in the description to become a member on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, go ahead and become a member at theconfessionalspodcast.com/join, and you can hear the whole episode today. All right, today we have David on the show. David, what's going on, man?
Not much. Just hanging out with you.
All right. Two Tennessee boys talking weird.
Absolutely.
Love it. So you're over, I think you're probably about 3 hours from me.
Yeah.
And in Middle Tennessee. You know what's funny is I just found out recently. So when I moved down here, people would say Middle Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, Middle Tennessee. Nobody in Pennsylvania said Middle Pennsylvania. Like that wasn't a thing. It was Harrisburg.
Yeah.
Or Central Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Middle Tennessee, the way people say it down here made me feel like it was an actual town. And so when people were saying Middle Tennessee, I'm like, man, this is a big town. Like they mentioned it more than Nashville.
Oh, it's just a big area is what it is.
That's what I found out. I was like, oh, so Middle Tennessee is just the general area.
Yeah.
Got it. I mean,
and then the other city is West Tennessee and the other city is East Tennessee.
It makes sense now.
Yeah.
It makes sense now. Now, nobody talks about West Tennessee. But East Tennessee, yeah, I say East Tennessee a lot, but I say East Tennessee because I don't want to tell people exactly where I live, even though some people have figured it out. And to those people who have figured out where I live, stay off my property for the love of Pete.
Oh, man.
Go home. Like, come on. I'll call the police. So,
not a good idea in Tennessee to go onto people's property uninvited. No.
And I gotta tell you, I did look into the gun laws when I moved here for a reason, so I'm very aware of what my legal rights are.
It's you can do whatever you want. It's basically the law.
Pretty much. Freedom.
Yep.
I love it. But let's move into the conversation of the day before I say something I regret. So you are a Kentucky boy turned Tennessee. And when you lived in Kentucky, that's where things started for you in your childhood. And from what I understand, it was you and your sister had these interactions. And so I'm going to let you kind of take it away from here and start laying out these different interactions you've had throughout your life, starting with Clifford. Now, when you say Clifford, I know this is not the case at all. But when you say Clifford, I keep thinking the big red dog, man. That's just every time I read Clifford, I'm thinking the first thing that pops in my head is the big red dog. I'm like, but it's not a red dog.
Well, now you know why Clifford the big red dog is creepy to me.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So growing up in Kentucky, small town right outside of Lexington, all my family's from there. It was a great childhood. Lots of friends in the neighborhood, lots of cousins, lots of aunts and uncles. A great town. I'd watch Andy Griffith reruns and I thought that was my town. Couldn't go anywhere with somebody who didn't know my dad or my mom. Just a great place. So kind of very happy childhood. I want to start off with that. So we lived in a neighborhood, simple house. Some of my earliest memories are probably around 4, 5, 6, 7 in there. My sister and I had separate bedrooms, but we would go to her bedroom, open up her closet door, which had the doors that, you open this way, fold it in, fold it out. And this figure, entity, whatever, would just sort of pop out from her closet, like from her clothes. Her clothes would kind of separate and he would pop out. Just to give a description of him, he was frail, faceless, but he was like wrapped, almost like a mummy. It was a white material, but it almost had a sheen to it, almost like a wax or satiny type sheen to it. He was faceless, but we could tell he had a face. You could see he had nose, mouth, and all that. But we weren't afraid of him, not at all, not a bit. We actually liked seeing him. he didn't scare us in the least bit. If I were to see him now, yeah, um, just because the oddity of it. But when he talked to us, I don't. Now I want to tell you, I don't remember a thing he told us. I don't remember anything we talked about. My sister doesn't either. But we would talk to him, and his voice, you would think I'm gonna show you exactly what he sounded like. Um, and you would think just the sound of his voice, you as a kid, you would be like, yeah, but not the case. Here's what he sounded like. I don't know. Give me a sentence to say.
Um, this is what his voice sounded like.
Okay. All right. I mean, my mind goes blank when I try to think, so he sounded like this. This is what my voice sounds like.
Yeah, that's creepy.
He whispered. But like I said, nothing weird about it to us, nothing strange, nothing scary. Um, our parents knew about him. We told our parents. I'm sure they were thinking, oh, it's just an imaginary thing, they've come up with. Okay, whatever. I can even remember an instance where we had family over and my sister and I went back to her bedroom, opened up the closet. Good old Clifford came out and I said, hold on a second. I went and I wanted one of my cousins to see him. And he was outside playing with, I think, other cousins and maybe some neighborhood kids. And I called him into the house. He's 4 years older than me. So he probably would have been around 9, 10, around that time. Brought him back and put him right in front of the closet. And he was just looking up at Clifford like, I'm sure it shocked him, and I distinctly remember Clifford came out and like kissed him on the cheek. Like he didn't hear a kiss, but that's what he did. He put his face up to my cousin's cheek. So bye, Clifford. Good to see you. We went to the kitchen. My mom's in there with somebody. I don't remember if it was an aunt or a friend. And I said, Mom, John met Clifford. And she's like, oh, he did. And John says, yeah, he kissed me.
Jeez.
Now, years later, I asked John if he remembered that. And he had to kind of think. He was like, and he started describing him. And I was like, yes, okay. And because that's one of the things over the years, I wanted to make sure I kept telling this story the same way, didn't elaborate, forget anything, add anything. And years after that, I asked him again if he remembered, and he had forgotten all about it. So,
Really?
or he said he had anyway. So that was basically just a normal part of our childhood. So 1979, I'm 8 years old. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, other weird stuff that happened. Now, just to kind of give people an idea, I was scared of things as a kid. I loved horror movies, Godzilla, old Dracula, Frankenstein movies. I had Famous Monsters of Filmland magazines and even the bubblegum cards. Was a big Kiss fan. None of that stuff, anything horror, I was like, yeah. But stuff did freak me out. I remember nightmares I had as a kid that would wake me up and just scare me to death. Remember watching In Search Of, and some of that stuff freaking me out a little bit. The one time weird thing that happened that I got freaked out by was my dad had an addition built to our house, and it was like a sunroom and then a den area he had built onto the house. And most of that was already built. And I assumed that there were plumbers that came to the house to work on something, because we had a little crawl space on the main part of the house that had a little door And they had that open. So me being a young boy underneath the house is fascinating, because you never see it. And I remember squatting down, knees in my chest, kind of looking under the house. My dad tells me, "Hey, don't let me catch you going underneath there," because it was dirt and stuff. And he didn't want me screwing something up, busting a pipe or something. So I just stayed on the outside of that crawl space door and was looking in, and all of a sudden, house disappears, neighborhood disappears, and I'm looking at, and this was probably morning time, I'm guessing, when this happened. But when the house and everything disappeared, it turned into dusk. It was like I could see the sun setting in the west where it would have been, open field, and there's a black man hoeing the field. He's wearing a fedora, um, a white button-down collared, shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the old style, like khaki style work pants, and he's hoeing this field, and I'm just looking at him like, what, put it in modern, adult terms, what the hell? And all of a sudden he stops and looks at me, and like he sees me. His eyes get wide open and he leans forward like he's like, what the hell? I freak out. That scares the hell out of me. I take off running. All of a sudden the house and everything's back. I run in and I tell my mom what just happened. And she's just like, whatever, kind of like, okay, um, but that scared me. That was a weird thing that happened. So fast forward 1979, my family moves to Tennessee.
All right. So before you go any further,
sure.
I'm afraid I'm going to forget details of what you just said, and I want to pick apart at this a little bit.
Okay.
So you squat down, and you didn't go under the house. You're just looking under, and then the house is just. Did it slowly disappear, or was it just an instantaneous vanishment?
I just remember it was a very natural, almost like a natural thing. It was just gone. Like I was.
You didn't feel anything?
No, not that I remember. It just happened. The only thing I've ever heard that comes kind of close to what I experienced is, who Whitley Strieber is, UFO aliens guy. He's talked about people, I guess at his house during a period of time would experience that. They would go on a walk and all of a sudden everything changed. Boom. And you're all of a sudden looking at something that shouldn't be there, or, whatever. I've often wondered if that was somebody's farm before the neighborhood was there. And because I would have loved, because for all I know, there may be a guy back in 1930s or 40s that said, I saw some white boy out in the field. There may be some ghost story floating around, back in the day that was me, and I wasn't a ghost, but I've always wanted to find out what was that before the neighborhood was there, and who worked there, who to belong to, all that stuff. But I never have.
So what's the history of that area? I mean, it's when because the way you described the work pants, the white button up, the fedora, sounds like more older time dress. And it's just, for me, it's hard to picture how old that is. But I mean, you mentioned it being a black man in the South hoeing. I mean, do you think that was a vision into like the past of like more of like a plantation slavery type situation?
I don't know. It was, I've got pictures of my grandfather back from the 40s and 50s hunting, and he's got those style pants on, and like I said, it was like just a white, normal button-down collared shirt with the sleeves rolled up. But he definitely looked like how people dressed back in the 30s and 40s. The fedora is a dead giveaway. I mean, it was definitely a fedora hat, and the pants were like the khaki style. I think Dickies still makes those. They're khaki work pants.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think it was a slave. He might have. My dad told me one time there was a family, and he said I think it may have been their farm. They were an old family in Versailles, and I don't know if he worked for them or, I don't know, but it definitely wasn't like slave period.
This was a preview of today's member episode. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more of it, go to theconfessionalspodcast.com, become a member if you're listening on the podcast feed. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and click the join button or the link in the description, and you can become a member today on YouTube and get this show.